Threat actor reports provide a detailed analysis of a given threat actor. In one case, one company we'll be looking at today that provides them is Mandiant. They're a cybersecurity company that specializes in incident response, threat intelligence, and other security services. These reports provide in-depth insights into specific threat actors or groups that are involved in cyber espionage, hacking, and other malicious activities. So in this lab, we'll get even more specific and look directly at a single threat actor instead of an industry to observe how we can gain intelligence on them and better defend ourselves. Let's open up the Mandiant APT41 report now in your lab data folder. With these types of reports, typically we'll see a history, trends, patterns, and likely plays in what's called the attack lifecycle. The table of contents here is nicely laid out for us to get an idea about what the report contains. Scrolling down to page 3, we can see an executive summary. And executive summaries are a lot more common in these types of reports. Notice how these summaries comprise more of strategic and operational types of intelligence. And that gives you a sense of who the threat actor is and what they want to do. We also get a sense of their capability level here, but it's not any more specific than that. We don't get very technical in this type of section with an executive summary. So we can see here that APT41 is considered with high confidence to be a Chinese state-sponsored espionage group. They target sectors like healthcare, video game industry, and they also look out for high-tech theft of IP. And some of their tactics include source code theft, ransomware attempts, and utilizing supply chain compromise. So that's a really nice little summary to get an idea about who this threat actor is. Now moving on to page 6, we can get a sense of the targeting history of APT41. It's important to understand this list as your business may or may not fall into it. We also see some geolocation information here too, and that's common in these types of reports, so we can see exactly where the threat actor is targeting nationally and internationally. Now moving on to page 9, we'll see a chronological path of targets. And this is helpful information to understand what are they more commonly doing these days and are they evolving. You can see they kind of stuck with the video game industry, but they've definitely expanded, and more recently they're looking into telecom. Now moving on to pages 12 to 14, we can start to see examples or case studies of how the threat actor has attacked other companies. And this is great to get a sense of a real attack scenario of them, how the attack was carried out. And we can see here in this case study that they actually utilized the keylogger to support China's own research and development efforts. These case studies also give a glimpse of their general operational strength and capabilities, including when they attacked. So looking at page 15, we can see the attack window when they performed their attacks. And that lets us better prepare our defenses to know when the enemy is coming, right? I'll move past this second case study, but feel free to read it when you get a moment. I'll go to page 21, and looking here, we can get a better sense of the profile of their targets as well too, because it's one thing to understand what they do, but who they're targeting gives us an idea of truly what they're capable of. And so, for example, looking at this little list over here, we can see that they've compromised some higher profile games from a distributor. Now, what if the game that we're working on is sort of in line with those games? And worse yet, what if our game is going to be distributed by that distributor? Again, and that's why it's important to read these types of reports to really profile the threat actor and see how relative they are to you. Now, I'm going to zip down over to pages 30 to 40 so we can look at something called attribution. And attribution here is where we start to get some level of degrees of confidence associated with technical pieces of information, such as mail addresses, domains, file types, types of malware, hashes, you name it. So if we were to determine that APT41 is indeed a threat to us, and relatively speaking, of course, then we should be looking at this level of attribution here and blocking out some of these IPs and domains and getting a better sense of what their malware looks like and how it's crafted. Now up next, I'll move over to page 42 and look at the attack lifecycle. We'll look at more of that in the next coming labs, but for all intents and purposes, these are all of the known attacks they've used from start to finish towards an organization. So what's interesting here is you can see that there are actually very few initial compromise techniques. And it might be suffice to say then, if we were to eliminate all of those types of vectors, those types of initial compromise techniques, then that's probably our best bang for buck of preventing them from ever getting a foothold in our organization in the first place. Now, moving on to page 43, what's really great about these types of reports is that you get a breakdown of each of the attack life cycles stage in depth. That helps you analyze it further. Like we're seeing here, We can see associated vulnerabilities, CVEs as they're called. We can see what they're doing. They're leveraging TeamViewer in this case. There's a lot of good information to understand the individual stages of the attack lifecycle, so we could kind of zero in on those and focus on them one at a time. And some of this information will seem really foreign to you, but some of it probably shouldn't at this stage of the game. If we look a little bit further into their lateral movement cycle, you can see that they're just running cmd.exe, and we've used that. We've run whoami commands. We've had some redirection go on. So it's not too far-fetched to look at a report like this at your level and then start to discern, yeah, they're running commands on CMD and they're trying to perform enumeration techniques to discover information about the current host that they've compromised. And then finally, these types of reports also reference common frameworks in the industry, such as MITRE ATT&CK, which we've talked a little bit about now several times just in reference. The next lab will jump more into it, but it's great because you can see that on each stage of the attack lifecycle, we actually have one of the MITRE ATT&CK TTPs that we can go and reference if we want to do a little bit more research on the threat actor and improve our security posture against them. Awesome. So this is where it starts to get pretty interesting, right? We're doing threat profiling, threat modeling. We're trying to identify what we have and is the threat actor a threat to us, relatively speaking, and how fast can they get to us by means of what we currently have established as security defenses against their known tactics, techniques, and procedures. So ultimately, reports like these are just another tool in our toolkit to be able to map our defenses against known threats. And most importantly, above all, when it comes to threat modeling and profiling, know thy enemy.